So we have our next speaker coming up, and his name is Mr. Bradley Pierce. He's right over here, so let's give him a round of applause for Mr. Bradley Pierce. Bradley Pierce is an attorney. He is an attorney. He's a good one, though. He's a good one, though. I'm sure you've heard every one in the book, right? So that's okay. But he's also the executive director of Abolish Abortion Texas. Okay, Abolish Abortion Texas. He's also the co-founding attorney of Heritage Defense, where he helps defend the parental rights of Christian homeschooling families around the country against the threats by social services. And I asked him if he could share a little bit about that, because I know we have several homeschool families here, so that would be great for them to know about. But more importantly, well, actually, before I get to that, he's also, I believe, unless you can correct me, but had a lot to do with the authorship of the abolition bills here in Texas and maybe other states that took the I don't know exactly how that worked, the template, but writing up the bills of abolition is helping a lot with that, which is pretty awesome, so we appreciate that. But more importantly, he is the husband of his wife, Cindy, and the father of 7 children. Amen. Amen. And a member of his local church and a servant of Jesus Christ. If you want to learn more about the organization he runs, it's ABOLISHABORTIONTX.org and also heritagedefense.org. It's in your pamphlet. It's all there. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Bradley Pierce.
Thank y'all. Actually, that's a little bit dated. Father of 9 children.
Oh,
actually, we're expecting twins next month. So we're very, very blessed. So thank y'all. Yeah, Darren wanted me to talk a little bit about Heritage Defense. So that's kind of my day job, I guess. Just most of my normal working hours working with Heritage Defense. I've been practicing law since 2007, but in 2010, helped co-found Heritage Defense, which defends the parental rights of Christian homeschooling families. So Christian homeschooling families join Heritage Defense, and if you ever have your parental rights come under attack, social worker knocking at your door, you can contact us 24/7, immediately connected with an experienced Christian attorney, and we can handle full legal representation, we handle the whole case, we cover all the legal fees involved, and even if you just have questions about your parental rights, you can call us, set up a call, talk to an attorney, get your questions answered about your parental rights anytime. Right now, one of the things we're getting a lot of calls about is people from California and Oregon and Washington saying, hey, I'm looking to move. Where's good states that have better parental rights than these states? So that's a common call that we get these days. But you can call and talk with an attorney about anything pertaining to parental rights. So it's a membership organization you have to join before you have a social worker at your door. So you can find out more at heritagedefense.org about that. And I've been blessed to work with that for the last 10 years. I am an abolitionist. That's why I'm here today. I'm an abolitionist. Sometimes I'm an abolitionist for all the reasons that you just heard from my brother Russell. But the other reason, or one way that I like to sum that up is I'm an abolitionist because abolition is doing what we've heard the pro-life movement saying for the last 47 years. Abolition is actually doing it, right? We hear in the pro-life movement, this is a child from the moment of conception. This is murder. We should be protecting them. Every baby, every life matters. But then the bills that the pro-life lobby and establishment introduce and pro-lifers get behind don't do any of those things. So abolition is actually consistently doing what most pro-lifers say. So we're going to talk about the last 47 years in this country since Roe versus Wade. And we have an upcoming election you may be aware of. By the end of this talk, I hope that although you may have other reasons, but whatever faith you have in our president, or in any president, not just this one, but in any president or court to abolish abortion, I hope that you will not have by the end of this talk. Because that is not where we should be putting our faith. Although the president has an important role, and we need to have a good president, and the court has an important role, we need to have a good court and good people on the court. But that's not where we should be putting our faith. And so let's look at what the last 47 years have looked like. Because the last 47 years, we've been trying to get rid of Roe versus Wade. We've been trying to get rid of Roe versus Wade, and there's really two ways to deal with Roe versus Wade. You can either change the court, change the Supreme Court to get them to overturn Roe versus Wade, or you can ignore the court on the issue of Roe versus Wade. I don't mean ignore it. It's a constitutional institution. It has a constitutional role, but ignoring it when it violates that constitutional role, as it did in Roe versus Wade. So there's two ways to deal with it: change it or ignore it. So for the last 47 years, we've been trying to get rid of Roe versus Wade by changing the court. So what does that look like? What is the strategy of the pro-life movement, of the pro-life lobby or pro-life establishment? What does that look like? Well, it looks like this, and I don't even have to tell you this. You know it. You've seen this. Every day you see this. The strategy of the pro-life lobby is to elect Republican presidents, to appoint pro-life justices, to overturn Roe versus Wade, right? That's what we're being told every day. Vote for this person because they're going to appoint pro-life justices to overturn Roe versus Wade, right? You're hearing that every single day. Then while we're doing that, pass incremental legislation to undermine Roe, to save some babies, and to weaken the pro-abortion movement. That is the strategy of the pro-life movement that we've, by and large, been doing for the last 47 years. So we're going to look at it in depth. First, elect Republican presidents. That's what we've been told we need to be doing, and we've been trying to do that for the last 47 years, and we've actually been doing a pretty good job of it. Because for the last 47 years, the majority of those years have been under Republican presidents. We had Nixon, and then Ford, and then with Democrat President Carter, and then we had 3 Republican administrations in a row. Then we had a couple of Democrats, and we had a couple of Republican administrations, and a couple of Democrats, and now we have a Republican administration. So that over the last 51 years, right, even leading up to Roe, 31 of those have been under a Republican president for the last 51 years, and 47 of those, or 27 of those have been under Republican. 27 of the last 47 have been under Republican president. Why do we still have abortion in this country? You know, yes, the Democrats have been fighting against this, but don't blame this just on the Democrats, because we've had way more control than they have over the last 47 years. And you can say, well, we had the presidency, but we didn't have Congress. Okay, well, we'll get into that. So, elect Republican presidents to appoint pro-life justices, right? That's one of the big reasons we're electing these Republican presidents. On the issue of abortion, that's maybe the reason that we're electing them. So how's that been going? Well, leading up to this was the way the court looked like at the time of Roe versus Wade, appointed by a couple of Democrat and a couple of Republican presidents. But you see here that most of the people on the court in 1973, at the time of Roe versus Wade, the court that decided Roe versus Wade was 6-3. 6-3 Republican appointees versus Democrat. Wait, 6-3? That's what we would have if Amy Coney Barrett gets approved. We'd have 6-3 then. Wait, that's exactly what we had at the time of Roe versus Wade. So and we got Roe versus Wade then. So should we be putting? Yeah, but it's different now. Okay, well let's look at that. So at the time of Roe versus Wade, we had 6 Republican appointees and 3 Democrat appointees. And here's how the court ruled in Roe versus Wade: 7-2. And one of the ones who voted against Roe versus Wade was one of the Democrat appointees. 5 Republican appointed justices voted in favor of Roe versus Wade, which means that even if we had had 100% Republican appointees, which that's a good foreshadowing actually, we still would have gotten Roe versus Wade. We still would have gotten Roe versus Wade in 1973. Well, Republicans were different then. Republicans were different. Okay, well then we've had some time since then to fix that. To make sure, we're going to make sure these are good justices we're appointing, right? So what does it look like since Roe versus Wade? Well, after President Nixon, Roe versus Wade, we had President Ford, and we had a Democrat leave the court who had voted for Roe. Get rid of that one and replace him with someone who's going to vote against Roe, right? And then when Carter comes up, oh no, we're losing a Democrat president. Guess what? He actually doesn't get to appoint any justices to the court. None whatsoever. So this is working great. We're moving right along. Republican president, we get Reagan. Reagan is our Republican president. We get another justice who voted for Roe. He leaves. And we get another justice on the court. She's going to vote against Roe versus Wade. That's our hope. Berger leaves the court. He voted for Roe. Let's replace him with someone who's going to vote against Roe. Then we have another. Powell leaves. He voted for Roe. Let's replace him with someone who's going to vote against Roe. This is working. Look at all. 4 people who voted against Roe, or who voted for Roe, we've gotten rid of them. We replaced them with 4 Republican-appointed justices. We could overturn Roe now. We don't even need any more, right? If what's happening is what we're being told is happening, that they're appointing justices to the court who are going to overturn Roe. But look, we get even more icing on the cake. We get another Republican president. Another person who voted for Roe, gone. Let's replace him with someone who's going to vote against Roe. Another one who voted for Roe is gone. Let's replace him with someone who's going to vote against Roe. 6 justices who voted for Roe, which was 6 of the 7 who voted for Roe are gone. And every single one of them have been replaced by the appointment by a Republican president. 100% have been replaced by Republican presidents over the course of those 19 years. So in 1992, this should be a slam dunk. Because why are we electing Republican presidents? Well, so they'll appoint pro-life justices who are going to overturn Roe. That's been the policy and the political strategy of the pro-life lobby. That's what we've been told. That's why we've been told to vote for Republican presidents. But how do they actually vote? Well, in 1992, we get an opportunity to see, although there were many along the way that should have told us. But in a big way, in 1992, we see 5 of those Republican appointees vote for Roe. Wait, 100% of the people who voted for Roe in Planned Parenthood versus Casey were Republican appointees. The court, did you see that last slide? Right here. The court now, it's 8 Republican appointees. There's only 1 Democrat appointee left in 1992, and he's pro-life. He's pro-life. He actually voted against Roe. And yet in 1992, they double down on Roe. They make it even harder to regulate abortion in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And of those 6 new Republican-appointed justices, 4 out of those 6 voted to uphold Roe. Of those appointed by President Reagan, 2 out of the 3 voted to uphold Roe. And I know a lot of people look up to President Reagan. I do too. But even if we had President Reagan from now to infinity, we would never overturn Roe at this rate. That should have been the end, right? If anyone was putting their faith and hope in Republican presidents appointing justices who are going to overturn Roe, it should have been dashed on the rocks at that point. That should have been the end. And I hope it is the end of it, if you're still there. I hope it's the end of it for you. But since then, what's happened since then? Well, we have some justices have gone off, and those have been replaced by a Democrat president, and then some more justices have gone off and been replaced by a Republican president, and then some more by another Democrat president. And then Scalia left, and then we got President Trump. We replaced him with Gorsuch, and then Kennedy and replaced by Kavanaugh, and now Justice Ginsburg is no longer on the court. Since Roe versus Wade, you may not have been doing math along here with me, so let me just do it for you. Since Roe versus Wade, there have been 15 justices appointed to the United States Supreme Court. 15 new justices. How many of those were appointed by Republican presidents? 11. 11 of them. 11 of them. Only 4 Democrat justices have been put on the court since Roe versus Wade. That's not even enough to ever have a majority. Wait, Bradley, are you saying that we've always had a majority? Yes. We've always had a dominant majority most of the time since Roe versus Wade. And now President Trump has the opportunity to, and he has nominated Amy Coney Barrett, who's currently there are hearings about her being confirmed as the court right now. But right now, the court is made up of 5 Republican appointees and 3 Democrats. Of course, these are not pro-life Democrats like we had in 1992. No. So since 1992, we've had the Supreme Court 100% of the time. Not just since Roe versus Wade, but since 1992, we've had the court 100% of the time. Because people say, well, we need to get the Supreme Court. We've had the Supreme Court. We've had it. Okay, well, people have always got to be moving the ball. They're always moving the ball on you. Because they don't want to take responsibility and actually do something themselves. So they want to put it off on somebody. We want to put it on the politicians, and the politicians want to put it on the court. That's called shirking our duty. Mm-hmm. Well, rather, but we also need Congress and the presidency. Oh, yeah? You mean like we had from 2001 through 2007, where we had every single branch of government was Republican? You mean like that? And again, from 2017 to 2019, under the first 2 years of Trump's administration, where we had every branch of government was Republican? Wait, how many did we? No, we didn't abolish abortion. Why not? Because we've been putting our faith in the wrong place. Look, the Democrats, only twice since 1992 have they held President, Senate, and House, and they've never held the court. But we've held it over 4 sessions, if you will, 4 2-year periods. All 4 branches. So listen, I'm not here to defend the Democrats by any means, actually not. But what I'm here is to do is to show you that this whole idea of our strategy being all about electing Republican presidents to appoint pro-life justices to overturn Roe, it hasn't worked. It has not worked for 47 years. We need to get over it. You can come up with other reasons to vote for Republican presidents. That's great. But this is not one of them. Okay? Or at least alone, this is not one of them. Again, we should elect good presidents. But this one, if this is all we're doing, this is not enough. So some days say, well, but Bradley, wait a second. Roberts, Gorsuch, Alito, Kavanaugh, we don't really know. I mean, they may actually be for overturning Roe versus Wade. We just don't know. We just don't know. Hey, you know how we could find out? We could pass a bill of abolition. And you know, then that would flush them out. And then we would know. Oh, we can't do that. Why not? I thought you said they were going to overturn Roe. Let's give them the opportunity. No. Okay, well then you must not believe that they're actually going to do what they say. In 2007, we had the partial birth abortion ban, which was upheld by the court. Hey, that's a victory for the pro-life side. But the author of that majority opinion said, this was Kennedy, he said, we assume the following principles for the purpose of this opinion. Before viability, a state may not prohibit any woman from making the ultimate decision to terminate her pregnancy. What Kennedy said. It also may not impose upon this right an undue burden, which exists if a regulation's purpose or effect is to place a substantial obstacle in the path of a woman seeking an abortion before the fetus attains viability. So even though this opinion is sort of a pro-life victory because, hey, we got our partial abortion ban, which saves very few, if any, babies. But hey, we won, but the opinion reaffirms Roe and reaffirms Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which is why one justice said, I agree with the outcome, but I'm going to write my own opinion to explain that I don't agree with Planned Parenthood versus Casey and Roe. And that was Justice Thomas, and Justice Scalia joined him in this. He said, I joined the court's opinion because it accurately applies current jurisprudence, including Casey, but I write separately to reiterate my view that the court's abortion jurisprudence, their cases, including Casey and Roe v. Wade, has no basis in the Constitution. That's what Thomas said, and Scalia agreed with him. Because when someone writes, when one of these justices writes an opinion, they write it, and this is a concurring opinion. He writes an opinion, and he says, hey, who wants to sign on to this? Who agrees with me? Put your name here. And Scalia says, hey, I'll put my name on that. Okay, well, what about you, Roberts or Alito? What's not to agree with? All he said was that Roe versus Wade and Casey are unconstitutional. I thought Roberts and Alito were supposed to be pro-life justices. But neither of them joined that. They refused to. Well, in 2016, we had another case, which struck down, if you remember, Texas had HB 2, the law, the 20-week ban, which wasn't challenged. And then there was hospital admitting privileges for abortion doctors, and there was the, you got to meet surgical center requirements, have wider hallways and things like that. That was passed here in Texas. And the court struck that down in 2016, led by, again, Kennedy. And so Thomas dissented from that. He said, this suit is possible only because the court has allowed abortion clinics and physicians to invoke a putative, basically means so-called, constitutional right that does not belong to them, a woman's right to abortion. Thomas said, and by this time Scalia had passed away. And Thomas said, I remain fundamentally opposed to the court's abortion jurisprudence. In other words, he's saying, in lawyer speak here, Roe and Casey are wrong, is what he says. And then he says, right, Republican colleagues? Roberts, Alito? And they did not sign on to that. They did not agree with that. In fact, Alito even said he wrote his own. So it wasn't for laziness that he didn't put his name on that. Not that it would require any effort, but he wrote his own opinion, his own dissent. And he said the constitutionality of laws regulating abortion is one of the most controversial issues in American law. But this case does not require us to delve into that contentious dispute. In other words, I'm not going to tell you where I stand on Roe versus Wade or Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Well, but we've got a couple new justices since then, Bradley. We got Gorsuch, we got Kavanaugh. Glad you brought them up. We got another case this year, June Medical Services versus Russo. This was basically that 2016 decision, Hellerstedt, version 2, because Louisiana did basically the same thing Texas did. And it went up to the Supreme Court again, they decided to hear it. And Thomas, this guy, he's consistent, which is great. He said, the Constitution does not constrain the state's ability to regulate or even prohibit abortion. Did you hear that? First of all, did you just hear what he just said? Thomas just said, the Constitution does not constrain the state's ability to regulate or even prohibit abortion. Thomas just said this year, if a state were to completely outlaw abortion, that's constitutional. Because the Constitution would not prevent that. That's abolition. Yeah. That's abolition. Then he goes on to say, this court created the right to abortion based on an amorphous, unwritten right to privacy, which it grounded in the legal fiction of substantive due process. As the origins of this jurisprudence readily demonstrate, the putative or so-called right to abortion is a creation that should be undone. Thomas goes on, because we lack jurisdiction and our abortion jurisprudence finds no basis in the Constitution, I respectfully dissent from this case. And again, Thomas, hey, anybody agree with me? Roberts, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, crickets. Nope. They refused to join that dissent. In fact, Alito writes his own dissent, and he actually says, well, the problem with the district court is that they applied the Hellerstedt case when they should have applied Planned Parenthood versus Casey. He basically reaffirmed Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which he kind of did in 2016 as well. So, are these really unknowns? Roberts, Gorsuch, Alito, Kavanaugh? Not really. Not really. So, some people say, well, but apparently there haven't been any opportunities to overturn Roe. Like we said, then let's pass the bill of abolition. And I'm not saying, I mean, if that would give the court the opportunity to see where they really are on a total ban. Thomas has told us where he is. We pretty much know where everybody else is. But if we want to prove it, let's pass a ban. Let's pass a total ban, which is called a bill of abolition. Because what we're passing right now, we're not even challenging them. In fact, Gorsuch wrote a dissent in that June medical case this year, and he said, quote, in truth, Roe versus Wade is not even at issue here. That's what he said. Hey, maybe we should put it at issue by passing a bill of abolition. That's what we should do. Only one current justice has ever publicly opposed upholding Roe versus Wade. So for the last 47 years, this is what faith has looked like, right? Because this is what we keep being told. Elect Republican presidents, appoint all justices, they're going to overturn Roe versus Wade. And we keep believing it again and again and again and again. That's right when we're about to kick the football in 1992. Oh, no. But still vote for us. You'll just vote. Just one more justice is all we need. Just one more. Just one. We can just get rid of Kennedy. Oh, now that Roberts, that guy's a turncoat. If we just get rid of him. Oh, I bet there's one more on it. If we can just get rid of him. That's what we've been doing. And along the way, though, hey, at least we've been passing some bills. Right? Okay, yeah, you made your points. Can't deny it. We haven't overturned Roe versus Wade in 47 years. I cannot deny that. Abortions are happening in all 50 states. But, Bradley, we have been passing some incremental legislation. We have been passing some of that, and that's been doing some good. Yeah, and it keeps getting struck down, first of all. In the 1970s, these are all the Supreme Court cases. This doesn't even include the circuit courts and the district courts. 1970s, these are all the Supreme Court cases deciding about pro-life bills and deciding against them. In the 1980s, here they are. The 1990s, here they are. In the 2000s, here we are. And we've been losing those cases for 47 years. We've been losing. That's one reason why, wow, 1990s, we had a lot more cases at the Supreme Court than we do in the 2000s or even 2010s put together. That's because we keep running out of things to lose on. You know, we have to keep making up new increments that the court is going to crush. Again and again. Bradley, but we need to pass bills to get votes, to look like we're doing something. Because that's what politicians do. We have to do something. Bradley, that bill of abolition will never pass. Wait a second. Aren't you the same one that pushes dismemberment bill that has never gone into effect? Yeah, but it passed and we were able to declare victory. but it's never actually gone into effect. Even the Fifth Circuit, the most conservative court in the country, just struck it down last week. It's like every time I give this talk, it's like a week before I get some gift that proves my point. They struck that down last week. Guess what they did earlier this year? They struck down a heartbeat ban. Guess what they did before that? They struck down an even later ban, a 15-week ban. That's the Fifth Circuit over Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, the most conservative circuit in the country, is striking down all of these pro-life bills. Yeah, but we need to look like we're doing something without actually doing it. Because that's what politicians do. But rather, we've won some cases. Oh, okay, let's look at the wins for 47 years. The federal courts have said, well, you can prohibit non-physicians from doing abortions. You can require a woman's informed consent. You can require the abortion bill to keep adequate records. The federal government can only fund some abortions. State Medicaid must only fund some abortions. You can require parental consent or court consent for minors. You can require parental notice for immature minors, for really young. You can say, hey parents, by the way, your child has an abortion. You can require abortion mills to be licensed. The state cannot be required to use resources for abortions. Oh, and also, we do have a partial birth abortion ban for the state and federal level. Oh, okay. So basically what we've won is that abortion's health care. That's what we've won over 47 years. Abortion's health care. Is that what we wanted? Is that what we wanted to win? To make abortion clean and sterile and acceptable and pretty and not as gross. And let's license it to give the government's approval to it. That's what we won. That's rubbish. But what we've lost is all of this. States can't prohibit abortion ads. Life of the mother abortion is not enough. You can't require father's consent, you can't require parental consent, you can't prohibit saline abortions after 12 weeks. Abortionists have standing to sue, which is, from a legal perspective, absurd. You can't require the safest technique for the baby, you can't require it to be done in a hospital, you can't require that women be told that the unborn child is a human life from the moment of conception, you can't require that fetal remains be disposed of in a humane and sanitary manner. By the way, a lot of these, even though we've lost on them in the past, we're just recycling a lot of these. You're just hearing all these again. We're just recycling the same stuff we've lost on before. It's like, yeah, but people have forgotten about that. We need new bills, so let's just recycle stuff. Do it again. You may not have waiting periods, even for minors. You may not require notification, even notification of the father. May not require hospital admitting privileges. May not require service center standards. May not unduly burden a woman's access to an abortion. That's the cases we've lost at the Supreme Court, a lot more at the lower circuit of district courts. So if we really undermined Roe versus Wade for 47 years, the opposite. We've reinforced Roe versus Wade for 47 years. We've reinforced it for 47 years. We are guilty of reaffirming Roe versus Wade. If you want the court to overturn Roe versus Wade, then you need to overturn it in the way you talk and in the way you act. Stop acting like it's the law of the land. And stop talking like it's the law of the land. Because it's not. And expect your politicians to stop acting and talking like it's the law of the land. Why do they draft heartbeat bills? Well, we got to work within Roe. Well, we got to do this within Roe. It's not the law of the land. It's unconstitutional, as Justice Thomas even said. And so we need to stop reaffirming it in our own hearts and minds and speech and what we accept from our politicians. But rather, we've saved some babies with these pro-life bills. Oh, like the dismemberment ban that hasn't gone into effect? Oh, like the heartbeat bills we've been passing across the country that everyone's excited about, none of which have gone into effect because they've all been struck down by the federal courts. Woohoo, heartbeat bans. Yeah. There's lots of places that have passed and federal courts have struck them down in Every single state. Last time I was talking about this, I said, except one, and that day, that state did too. Right before it went into effect. Every single state, heartbeat, gone. Well, Alabama did a total ban, Missouri did a total ban. But both of those, they said, but we're not going to, it's literally said, we're not going to enforce this until roads are returned. Which just further reinforces and legitimizes Roe. But we can pass it through the state today. Again, you can't save babies with bills that never go into effect, first of all. Well, but some have gone into effect. Okay, some. Abortion numbers have been going down in Texas. Here, the blue line is total abortions, the orange line is chemical abortions. Which said, you see, took a dip, but now it's headed up. Texas abortions have been going down. Well, what about our abortion rate, which is really what matters most, because it's actually the percentage, right, of the population. Well, the abortion rate. This is the orange line is actually the total U.S. abortion rate here, and the blue line is Texas. Wait a second. You're saying that abortion rate has gone down across the whole country over the last 12 years? Yes, not just Texas. Well, but that's because there's mostly pro-life states, right? And the pro-choice states, the numbers are not going down because the reason numbers are going down are because pro-life bills, and they're not passing pro-life bills, so their numbers can't be going down. But that's actually exactly what's happening. Here's New York. Look at their line, the blue line. Again, orange is chemical. The blue line, their abortion numbers are also going down. Yeah, but what about the rate? Their rate's going down even faster. This is the rate. But I thought it was the pro-life bills that were making the number go down. Clearly it's not. Because New York hasn't passed a pro-life bill. They're the ones who just passed the bill and said you can abort up until birth. And their numbers are going down. Their reported numbers are going down. This is New York City. Right? This isn't rural New York. This is New York City. Their numbers are going down, actually, even faster than the rest of the state. And just to show you this, I've kind of block out, just so you can see, compare these angles, because I wasn't able to overlay them. This is Texas, right? This is Texas abortion numbers. And look, we kind of stay above the black where it cuts off. Here's New York's abortion numbers. They go below. Here's New York City's abortion numbers. They go below. They're going down faster than Texas is. So, if you want to save babies, the way to do that is not to pass pro-life bills, it's to move to a Democrat state.
Oh my gosh.
No, the way to save babies is to completely and totally abolish abortion and accept nothing less. That's the way to save babies. That's the way to save them.
But why are they going down in those states?
That's another conversation for another day. Or you can ask me afterwards.
Okay.
So, well, okay, but Bradley, okay, last strategy though, we've been weakening the pro-abortion movement, right? My generation will, right? My generation, because we're more pro-life than ever, and that we're winning. Us versus Planned Parenthood, we're winning. Okay. This is Planned Parenthood's government funding. This is their funding. This is their overall revenue, which took a slight dip, but is actually going back up. Because for two reasons. Number one, our president keeps signing bills that fund them even more than they've ever been funded before. And number two, he did do the one thing where he took away Title X money, but a federal court, guess what? Just a few weeks ago, gave that back. So their revenue, they're doing well. And you know what pro-life bills actually do? Well, I'll let the Supreme Court Justice tell you. Justice Alito, in 2016, Texas, this is Texas, we passed HB 2 to put regulations on abortion clinics. And Justice Alito, even though he didn't agree with Thomas in his dissent, he did say, Planned Parenthood is obviously able to comply with the challenged HB 2 requirements. So wait, we passed all these pro-life bills and this whole omnibus bill in HB 2 in 2013, came to the court in 2016. And Alito says, Planned Parenthood can comply with all of these. They're complying. But the president of Petitioner Whole Woman's Health, a much smaller entity, has complained that Planned Parenthood puts local independent businesses in a tough situation. Remember Economics 101? Or at least the Free Market Economics 101? Which is that there's some groups of businesses that like regulations, and one group of businesses that doesn't like regulations. One group of businesses likes regulations, and in fact is often the ones asking for agencies to be created and writing the bills themselves to regulate themselves.
Large ones.
What's that?
Large ones.
The large businesses, the big businesses, they love regulations. Why? Because it crushes their competition and puts them out of business, which is what we saw not just in 2013, but for the last 47 years. This is what has happened for the last 47 years. This is Planned Parenthood's market share of abortions. Every pro-life bill we pass that actually goes into effect that regulates abortion puts their competitors out of business. But they can comply with it because they're the big business. If I'm Planned Parenthood, I like abortion regulations because they're putting all my competitors out of business. And at this point, they have over 40% of the market share of abortions. So are we hurting? Are we weakening the pro-abortion movement with our pro-life bill? No. No, we're not. And in the meantime, over 47 years, there's been 61 million dead and counting. 63 million, I think, last time I saw. And again, those are just reported. Way more unreported. So we have to admit, for the last 47 years, we've already heard, and we will continue to hear, why incrementalism, or gradualism, or the pro-life strategy is wrong, morally wrong. But I hope what you've also heard here is that it is a failure. It is a failure. And we need to admit that. It's not working. We need to abandon it. So again, there's two ways to deal with Roe. Change the court so they'll overturn Roe, which we've been trying to do. And we should keep trying to do, right? We should keep trying to get good justices on the court and get good presidents in office. We should keep trying to do that. But that's not, as history tells us, that's not what's going to overturn it. We have to ignore it. Ignore Roe versus Wade. Just like we just heard Justice Thomas tell us, it's unconstitutional. But Bradley, it's the law of the land. No. You know where that phrase comes from? It comes from the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, which says, this Constitution is the supreme law of the land. This Constitution and the laws which shall be made in pursuance thereof. are the supreme law of the land. Well, Roe versus Wade is unconstitutional. And we could talk about why for a long time, but I'll just leave it with Justice Thomas says so. And I agree with him. But we can talk about the reasoning more later. But I think everyone agrees with me that Roe versus Wade is unconstitutional. Then stop acting like it's constitutional. Stop acting like it's the law of the land. And stop letting our politicians get away with talking about it and acting like it's the law of the land. If a politician says anything about Roe versus Wade being the law of the land, they need to be voted out of office. Because they are rebelling against their oath to support and defend the Constitution, so help me God. They have violated their oath when they do that. We can't let them get away with that. Otherwise, we are doing what we complain about the court doing, and that is reaffirming Roe versus Wade. Every time we support them, every time we vote for them, every time we let them get away with that, every time we don't go recruit somebody to run against them, every time in our own language we support heartbeat bills or partial bans or anything other than total abolition. That's what we're doing. We're legitimizing Roe versus Wade. So, we must ignore Roe versus Wade because it's not the law of the land. It's just the opinion of a few people who are violating the supreme law of the land. We need to ignore Roe because Roe versus Wade is wrong. Thank you. That's all I have.
You can hear me, right? Forgot my microphone. Let's give Bradley another round of applause. Pretty enlightening, would you say? Would you say? I think that's kind of the word that comes to mind. Testing is enlightening, right? Because if you've never really studied that, you've never really looked into it, it's actually quite surprising you. It's like, wow, I had no idea, right? So we appreciate that presentation.